Hey everyone, and welcome back to Mastermind Academy. We are in week, I think we're in week 10. We're either in week 10 or 11. I think we have a week or two left of this introductory DevOps bootcamp. Welcome to the stream if you're new. The first few minutes we get a few things together. Gives me a chance to get a little more set up. I want to apologize for missing the Wednesday stream. I actually did pre-record the Wednesday stream, but I did not fully understand how to get that to run properly. I learned previously that the weekend before, I learned how to rerun something you've already recorded. Since I didn't live stream that, I didn't do that properly. I did pre-record it. And then when I went in to try to rerun it, I thought I had it set up right, but I obviously didn't because it would not run. But yeah, so sorry about that. We're gonna get that rectified. We're gonna combine this. I'll learn how to do that for the next iteration. Again, one of the good things I found out, this is kind of the beta. This is kind of the pilot for this. So learn a lot of cool things about Twitch. So I'll get that fixed up next time. But I did miss that for a good reason. I was out at a conference out in Minneapolis, Twin Cities, Minnesota. It was a Blacks in Technology conference. It was a pretty cool conference. I got to meet a lot of cool people. Got to make some good connections. Got to hear some cool talks about some cool technologies and things like that. So if you're hopping on the stream and that's where I met you, welcome. I'm glad you were able to come over and check this out. Yeah, so tonight is going to be part 2 of our Docker series. So this is actually going to be a 3-part Docker series. It was supposed to be 4-part. We're going to have to condense the orchestration portion of it. So we'll get into a little bit of the orchestration tonight. And let's pull up the curriculum so I can show you what we're going to do to make sure we stay on track to finish right before Halloween. Because I know everyone wants to get done then. But hey, Doug Butter, welcome back. Good to see you on. So it's public beta. Does that mean we get mentioned in the credits as beta testers? Sure, absolutely. Everyone who's been on, maybe we can put together a slide of beta testers. I can definitely add everyone in there. That would be pretty cool. I'm pretty sure I can export all of my followers and subscribers, and I can get everyone on the slide. But yeah, absolutely. So this is it's we're doing this full force, but it's essentially a beta. It's the first time we're doing it. We didn't run through this, we didn't test it beforehand. So absolutely, you are beta testers, and I appreciate that. Helping perfect it. So I'm going to be putting up a link for feedback pretty soon to allow people to start getting in some feedback. People have already sent me feedback, which I appreciate. People have sent me feedback in Slack or whatever way. So a couple people have emailed me. I really do appreciate those things. I got a whole running list. I started using a cool app called Notion to like set up my all my things and to follow what I'm doing and take notes. If you've never used it before, I recommend checking it out. It's pretty cool. I just found out about it. I was using Evernote, but this is kind of like Evernote plus like Jira, well, Evernote, like Trello, and a few other tools kind of mixed together. It's a pretty simple application. It's pretty cool, but I've been using that, so I have a whole giant Notion list of all of the feedback and things that I kind of want to implement, things that I've already implemented. Yeah, so I'm keeping track of all that stuff. So feel free to give me more information about that. But so what we are doing for the curriculum. So where we stopped at is last Monday we were able to dive into this part 1 of hands-on with containers. So we went over what Docker was. We talked about Docker and containers, not just Docker, but containers as a whole. We talked about Docker. We talked about some of the terminology. We got Docker installed. We quickly ran through kind of the anatomy of a Docker file. We built out some basic Docker files, but we didn't get to dive deep into that because this was a lot of information. So part 2 tonight, we are going to be diving deeper into that. We're going to be checking out the Docker files a little bit deeper. And then we'll tonight we're going to be doing a lot of playing around. And so tonight we're also going to talk about container management. So like, I showed you guys how to remove containers and things like that, but just talk about the container management process and image management process. Persisting data. This one's huge. We'll learn about how to persist data and make sure that you have data that gets saved. Make sure that things that get processed in a container that you need to save are saved outside of that container. We'll talk about a few best practices, and again, we'll just mess around and we'll dive into. We'll grab some container images. We'll write Docker files to kind of extend those things, and we'll just have a little bit of fun tonight. Tonight we'll also dive into. We're going to do 2 parts of container orchestration. We're going to do this because Kubernetes is a big thing, and some of the concepts there are rather large, and so I thought that was going to take a 2-parter. I don't necessarily think that's going to take a 2-parter if we cover the Docker Compose stuff tonight and just talk about container orchestration. So we're going to try to get through. We're going to try to talk about container orchestration, what that is, and we'll hop into Docker Compose. We'll get that installed and we'll use it a little bit. And then next time it'll be pretty much all about Kubernetes. We'll talk about some of the other container orchestration platforms, but we'll hop into Kubernetes. So that'll be pretty dope next time. So that'll put us right back on track. So tonight we're here. We're combining October 9th and October 14th tonight. We're going to get through some of that, and then we'll be right back on track on Wednesday with part 2 of container orchestration. Then we don't really have much left. We kind of have all the tough stuff out of the way. CI/CD stuff is big. I still intend to do that with Circle CI because I know in the very beginning I said we would look into what I think it's called GitHub Actions. I have not gotten a chance to look into GitHub Actions yet, so I don't really know how to use it. Maybe if I dive into it for a short amount of time and it looks like something cool, maybe we will just try it out and we'll YOLO it on stream and see if we can get that up and running. But we can definitely talk about some CI/CD concepts as well. Monitoring, logging. This one will be fairly simple, pretty straightforward, but I want to show you the tools that you have available to you. These tools actually might change. CloudWatch will stay the same because we're using AWS, but Monit and Datadog, I know some people were kind of going ahead and kind of diving into some tools. It's completely fine if you dove into those. Again, the concepts are what matter, but we might use some different tools, or we just might use these ones that we have here. And then we've got we've got an industry panel. So we figured out a way to record a bunch of people at once, which is really nice. So that hopefully that works out well. You'll get to talk to some industry professionals with varying skill levels. We'll talk to someone who just kind of got started in their career, but has kind of been around it for a little while. We'll talk to some people who are very, very senior and all in between. We'll talk to other engineers that aren't just DevOps engineers. So if you're interested in other things, or you have some specific questions about or insight, and you want some insights from other pieces of the industry, we will have engineers there for that. And then the last thing we'll do right before Halloween is we will talk about conquering the DevOps interview process, and we'll go through that. Very similar to if you've read the book, there's a book about the software engineer for software engineers about conquering the interview process. We'll do something very similar to a lot of the topics that they talk about in the book, and we'll go through real interview questions. We'll talk about all the stuff you can do that's not technical to make yourself look like a better candidate as well. So cool. Any questions before we hop into containers part 2 tonight? I guess not. Let me just make sure. Let me move around my windows. I have way too many windows open on here. Today was a busy day as well, so I didn't get as much done as I wanted to. But also, I see that this Brooks A321. I see this new Twitch First Founders thing. So it looks like you've been a subscriber since the very beginning. So I appreciate that. That looks pretty cool. I don't really know what that is. I just want to hover it. It lets me know what that is. So that's pretty cool. I guess you get extra badges now that didn't exist before. That's pretty cool. All right, so we're going to hop back into our same slides because I want to talk about something we missed last time. Well, not missed. Something we talked about, but that we did not get into last time because we're supposed to get into it this time. Let's go into Drive. Let's go into our Bootcamp curriculum, and let's get back into containers in Docker. And let's go back down. We can skip all the what are containers things here, but what we do want to talk about tonight is this one right here. So the Docker important notes, and I'll present this because, again, I said this slide was very important last time, and I want to make sure everyone knows that it's very important this time. So Containers are designed to run a single process. We talked about that. We showed you that a little bit, even though you can run more than one process. They're designed to run a single process. But the second one is the big one that we're going to be talking about tonight. That we're going to be focusing on first. And that's that containers are designed to be ephemeral. And so they're designed to go away. They're designed not to stick around. And that includes the data for them as well. Yeah, that includes the data for them as well. So we did a couple things last time with Nginx, but we didn't talk about what you need to do if you need to make data persist. Persisting data is probably the biggest challenge, or what was the biggest challenge with Docker containers. And I gotta hit next again. I told you guys, every time I hear a song with words in it, throws me all the way off. But cool. Yeah, containers are ephemeral. The data doesn't stick around. But one of the biggest problems people had was, making that data stick around. You need a lot of times you need data to persist. You need it to persist somewhere on disk for another application to be able to retrieve or output from an application. There are tons of reasons why data needs to be able to persist, and you need to be able to do that effectively. And tonight we are going to talk about that. So let's hop right into. Let's go back into our Docker files that we were using before. Let's see what we had in there. So I think we were in documents, Docker examples. All right, and we'll just open this up in Visual Studio Code. I mean, later. We didn't save. Did I delete everything out of here? All right, no big deal. We'll make a new Docker file. And let's do like a from Ubuntu. We'll do Ubuntu latest. I think last time we did something like what was this copy.txt here? Probably we copied in the Docker image. So I think last time we did something like this. We did copy copy.txt into /home/Ubuntu, and then I think we did our command was something like cat /home/Ubuntu/ copy.txt. I think it was something like this. So what we have here is I wrote a quick Docker file, and this may not work. We're just gonna try this out really quick. But we have a base image here. So remember, we said the from is one of the pieces of the anatomy of a Docker file. That very first line has to be your from. It's got to be the first one up here, and it's going to give you a base image. So I want to use all the components that Ubuntu has available to it. So we're going to call it Ubuntu. And now you can specify a particular version. Do you remember where you can get this information from about what this reference is? You can get it from, let's close this. You can get it from the Docker Hub. So we go to hub.docker.com. And here's where you would find the things that you need, or you could build it out yourself. But for most of this, we're going to be using things that are already here. I know that there's an image that exists that gives you the tools and things that Docker has. And it looks like actually the latest was updated a few seconds ago, which is pretty cool. And so we're just going to use this image tag. And so I could tag it with 1804 or 1904, but I'm just going to grab latest. And so for latest, you don't need to specify anything. So this from line is going to take the latest image of Ubuntu. So it's just like me doing, and actually you saw it up here, Docker pull Ubuntu to get this image. And if I did that, I might already have it. All right, so I already have it. So it's going to use this base image, this Ubuntu image that I have here. And then the next line it should do is it should copy this copy.txt file. So I have this copy.txt file locally. It's going to copy it into our container, and all it has in it is this information here. And then when it starts, it should run this command. Usually you would have your command in a different format than this. You would have it comma separated inside little brackets. But we're gonna try this just to see if it works. So I'm gonna build this really quick. Hey T-Rex, yeah, we're back. Thank you for hopping on the stream. I'm doing good. I hope you're doing good as well. How are you doing? So Remember our command to build. I'm going to docker build -t to give it a name, to tag it. And I'm going to say copy test. That's what I'm going to call this image. And then I'm going to hit a dot so it builds here. So it built. And if I do docker run let's copy test. And I do that. Okay, it didn't get copied in. Actually, do I have to do it like this? There might not be an Ubuntu user. Let's put this just in. Let's put this in home. Let's just see. Let's rebuild it. All it tells me, so it actually ran properly. It tried to run my command and just let me know this wasn't here. I bet the Ubuntu user is not there. And if I do that, cool. It actually did what I wanted to do. It went ahead and it catted what was in that container thing. I appreciate it. Appreciate it, T-Rex. Actually, that's what I forgot to say. For anyone who doesn't remember, I asked everyone a few weeks ago if you guys could vote for me. I shared a site. A lot of you went on and voted for me. I really appreciate that. I was able to win that award. I did win the Technically Baltimore 2019 Impact Leader of the Year award. So I really appreciate everyone who went on and voted for me. Really meant a lot to me. So yeah, I appreciate that. I've gotten a lot of feedback from it. A lot of people have congratulated me. I really genuinely do appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. That was you guys. So I appreciate that. But so we've got a container. We've built a container now that does something. It does something dumb, but it does something, and we're gonna build further off of that. So what if we actually, let's say this was actually a script. Let's turn copy.txt into a script. We're gonna say /bin/bash. And what is our script gonna do? Maybe our script will do something like it's gonna ls-lah/bin /user/bin. Let's try that. And then it's gonna give us WC-L. So this is this WC-L is how you get the line count for items. So I'm just gonna see how many items are in /user bin, and so we're gonna write a script to do that. And then I'm gonna actually just copy this into /home, and then I'm going to run chmod /home/ I'm gonna make sure it's executable. And I'm gonna try to run it. And actually, I think I could just call it, I believe, actually, we're gonna rename this to script.sh. And don't worry about what I'm doing here. I'm actually just gonna use this to show you a little bit about persistency and persisting some data. So don't sweat what I'm doing right now. Not super important. I can't do that. So let's rename copy.txt to what are we renaming it to? Script.sh. All right, here we go. That txt is deleted. All right, so now we have a script instead of that text file. So all it's gonna do is that script should just print out. Basically, it's gonna see what's inside of user bin, and then it's going to see how many lines there are there. So it should just spit out a number. And let's go ahead and save this, and let's make sure this will run. So I'm gonna rebuild this, and then I'm gonna docker run copy test. Actually, I wonder why it didn't rebuild a new image. Oh, here we go. No such file or directory. That text, perfect, right here. I didn't change everything that I needed to change. See, this is why you need to pay attention. I wasn't paying attention, and I should have seen here that my build actually failed. It says the copy failed, and it lets you know why. because copy.txt did not exist because I changed the name. So let's rerun that. And my container built. And if I run it, okay, so now we have 219 items in user bin. So this is the output of our script. But what if, let's say, what if we wanted to save this? What if this was actually a much larger script? What if the script did a bunch of data processing and, once it was done, it spit us out like a log file, and then that log file, how do we get that if what is inside of a container doesn't do anything? What are your options? So you could do something cool, like you could set up email in the container, but email's annoying to mess with, and you could email that off somewhere. So you could do that, but you could also just store it onto a location on the host machine. So how are we going to do that? How would you store something to a location on the host machine? You have two options for this. It's really one option now. But you can do two different things with it, and that is with Docker volumes, mounts or volumes. So volumes is actually relatively new in the grand scope of how long Docker has been around. But let's talk about what Docker volumes are. All right. Let's see. So Docker volumes allow you to basically create these volume mounts that you can use that store data from a container and that multiple containers can connect to. So it's a pretty cool thing here. Now that the preferred mechanism for persisting data generated and that's generated by Docker containers and used by Docker containers. And basically what you do is you create these volumes and then you go ahead and you mount them to a container. And I think we talked about like NFS mounts and stuff before. We talked about mounting file systems before, but that's what you can do. So there is a Docker volume command. I type in Docker volume, it'll give me some things here that I can do. I can only do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things for volume. So I can create a new volume. So if I want to have a new volume for any container to use, I can do that. I can inspect, I can see I can see information about that volume. I can do an ls to see all volumes, prune to remove them all, to remove all unused ones, and rm to remove one, similar to the Docker rm command. So first thing we're gonna do is Docker volume ls to see what volumes we have here locally. And when I do that, you can see here I get driver and volume name. These are the column headings. So I actually don't have any volumes installed on my system. So I'm going to create one. Docker volume create. We'll call this test volume. And we'll hit enter. And we get a little spit out. It echoes out the name of our volume. And if we do an ls again, it looks like now we have a volume that we're able to use. This driver says local. That just means it is a local volume to the machine that I'm currently on. So what do we do after that? After that, we can go ahead and we can mount this volume to our container. Now, how do we do that? Maybe if we do the Docker command, let's see here. Actually, I actually thought it was -v. So let's check this. Oh, Docker run. Docker run help. This will give me a different set of instructions. Yes, so a -v will allow you to basically bind a mount volume. So I can mount the volume that I've created to a directory or somewhere inside of the container itself. But what does this volume, like, where does it save information? So if I do Docker volume inspect, and what did I call it? I called it test volume, I think. All right, so we get some information. If we go ahead and inspect it, we'll get some JSON here, and it gives us some pretty cool information about the volume that we have. That's pretty important. It lets us know when it was created, lets us know what driver it is, and again, we'll talk about drivers more in a second, but it's a local driver for now. Labels, if I give it any labels, I can use that to identify this volume. And then this is a good one here, the mount point. This is where on your computer locally the data is going to be stored at. So if I do an ls for var lib docker volumes, actually, I wonder if it's not going to let me. Docker. Okay, I'm going to have to do a sudo. That's annoying. Let's see, cd slash r lib cd docker cd. Ah, man, sudo minus. Let me sudo root because that's gonna get annoying. And if I do docker volume, so now I'm root. You can see my prompt changed. I changed from my user to the root user. I don't recommend doing this unless you are very clear on what you're doing. The way I was able to do that is it seems a little weird that you're actually able to do this, but the Sudo command allows you to escalate your privileges, and because you're allowed to escalate your privileges, I'm allowed to assume the root user completely if I'd like. So basically saying sudo su minus, you don't need the minus, you can just do sudo su, and this basically allows you to switch to the root user. And if I type in who am I, you can see that I am root. And if I do a docker volume, and there are better ways to do this. I'm just doing it for speed's sake. And I do inspect, what do we call that? Test dash volume. We get this here, and if I ls dash la dash var lib docker volumes test volume underscore data. There's nothing in there currently, but this is where the information will be that gets saved. It'll get saved to this place locally on my computer. So that's one way to do it, and that's the preferred way for Docker to do it. Docker would prefer that you do it that way. But you can also mount directly to a mount or folder that is on your computer. So if I wanted to do, let's go back to where I was, documents, cd docker examples. Cool. Let's say I made a directory here. I can do mkdir persist data. And I can make this directory here, and you can see now persist data directory is gone here. I could link this directory to a folder or to a mount point that is in the container as well. So I can do those two different things. But again, remember Docker, they're recommended, the best practices and the recommended thing for Docker to do, or that Docker wants you to do, is to mount that to a Docker volume. So you could always chown, yeah, I could chown everything, but I'm not gonna mess around with the way Docker is set up. I've actually broken Docker a fair amount of times, running into weird permissions problems. I've had times where adding myself to the Docker group did not work on like certain distros. It's been really weird, but I wouldn't do that. But you can always blow it away. It's no big deal. We're on a VM here. We can mess around all that we'd like. So let's set up our container to actually push this out to a new file. So the script is going to run. Remember, what does our script do? Something very simple. Our script just tells us how many items are in, and let's actually comment this. Counts how many items are in /user/bin. So this is going to spit us out a number, but let's say we wanted to keep that information. Again, imagine that this script was something bigger than it is. Let's say we're going to pipe this to maybe we're going to mount it to /home/ output. We're going to create a folder called output, and we're going to call this log.txt. So basically, if I do this is just, we talked about this redirect operator, this output operator here. This is going to basically redirect standard output to this file. So instead of just spitting out the number that it did before, it's going to put it in a file that's in home output log.txt. We don't actually have that directory doesn't actually exist. So let's go ahead and make sure that directory exists within the container, and we're going to say make directory /home/output. All right, so that's gonna get created, and then we're gonna so let's actually run this first. Let's build and run this first. And this is a good Linux tutorial as well. We're gonna clear this. Run. Oh, thank you. Good catch. Definitely a run instead of copy. We would have seen that during the build, but definitely a run command instead of a copy command. We talked about Linux layers before. Remember, every time you get to one of these new red items, it's going to create a new layer. And again, just for a refresher, one of the ways you can make this so that there's not two separate layers here, two run commands, if you didn't need them to be, is you go ahead and you can go up here and you can do an double ampersands, and this achieves the same thing but does it in one layer. It only does it in a single layer, but we'll go ahead and we'll go back to here and let's go ahead and let's build that. So good catch, thank you for that. Build it again, let's run it again. All right, and we run it. This time nothing happens. Before we got the output, it was like 219 or something like that. But why didn't we get any output? We didn't get any output again because we redirected the information into a different file. So instead of sending it to standard output, this down here would have kicked out the information from standard output. We are sending that into a file. So we can just do something like this because we can't do multiple of these commands. And we're gonna say and cat /home /output /log.txt, just to make sure everything's working how we want. So basically putting this information into this file, and then we're gonna go ahead and spit out the information that's in that file. And let's see if we build it again. Actually, I didn't save this, so it did not rebuild. Oh, maybe I did. What didn't I save? I didn't save that, no big deal. Okay, I'll build it again just to make sure. Put down, build, run, and it kicks it out. So now we actually get some output. So this is great, but we don't want to do it from here. You know, a lot of times you'll be running these containers on a remote machine, on a machine that don't have access to, that you're not currently watching. So we want to keep that information around. How do we do that? We don't need to do that in a Docker file at all. We can leave it here. But what we can do is in the run command, we saw that -v. And what we can do is we can mount I believe it's this test volume is what we created. So you give the name of the volume on the left, and then you give it where in the container you want it to mount to. So I want to say I want to map it to home output. So now the directory home output that's going to be in the container is actually going to be mounted to the volume on my host machine, test volume. It should be, at least. Again, I might have to reference the documentation for this. I don't run containers like this. I don't run individual containers ever. So sometimes I miss the flags, but it's something very similar to this. If not, we'll look it up in a second. But I don't even actually need to change. Actually, I'm gonna rebuild because we removed that second cat command, and then I'm gonna run this right here. And now I ran this, and so what we can see is if we actually go to, let me open up a new thing here, and I'm gonna go sudo minus, and if I take, whoops, I'm gonna enter my password. There we go. Cool. If I do it a Docker volume inspect test volume, we're gonna go here. We're gonna look in here and we're gonna see if there's a file in there. There should be a file in there. There should be a file called log.txt, and we should be able to see what information's in it. So I'm gonna cat this, I'm gonna cat log.txt, and we see 219 is in there. So actually, if we cd into it instead, we will now see that there is a file called log.txt that is in there. So what basically happened, we can also see that let's prove that we don't have a running container anymore. So docker ps, you can see there's no running container. If I do a docker ps-a, you can see that one exited about a minute ago. That was copy test, and that's what created our stuff. So if we actually were to, so any of our containers that were attached in the same way that were attached to this same test volume mount, we'll be able to retrieve that data. That data persists, it doesn't go anywhere, even though the container exited. So that's pretty cool. But we can also do the same thing with this directory that we have here. And I think I can just do maybe this change. It used to be like a dash mount or -m or something like that. But let's try persist data. Let's try to put it in this directory. I might have to do like a // Let me try // to be safe. Let's run that. Response includes invalid characters. All right, so now if I open this up, it's not in there. Did I spell it right? Persist -data. This actually might have created one for me. So Docker volume ls. And it looks like it created a persist data volume for me. So, but there is a way to do this. Let me try the -m. I've seen people do it with the -v before though, which is very interesting. -- mount. We'll look at the docs in a second. I just wanted to see if I can get it from memory. Persist data must be key. Invalid argument for mount. Let's see. All right, we'll check that out shortly. Let me hop into the chat. Can you add a command at the end of the run as well? Oh, you mean behind a copy test? Yes, you can add. So whatever you, I'm pretty sure whatever comes after, I'm pretty sure all the flags have to be beforehand. And I think whatever comes, I don't know, actually. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that. Let's try it. Great question. Let's go back to the last one that worked. So this one, let's try to add this at the end. I don't think you can run this at the very end. Generally, everything run at the end, I think, gets executed against the container. But we're gonna find out in a second. Volume, test volume. And that's gonna go to /home/output. So yes, yes, I believe everything that gets submitted after the name of the image is actually, it gets passed as an execute, I believe, into the container, I think every time. So I don't think you can put it afterwards. So unless I'm doing that wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can't do it afterwards. Pretty sure they have to be beforehand. And we'll get into some more execute commands in a little bit. Copy test. Yeah, pretty sure it has to be beforehand. So that was a good question because I didn't even know. Is there a way to get a nicer output from Docker PS? So, yes, there's definitely a way to get nicer outputs. The only ways that I know how to do it are through knowing what information you want and to put together the command yourself using various Linux tools to be able to format what you see on the screen. So using tools like awk to be able to grab certain columns that you'd like to get that information. Generally, this is not a problem. Like if I close this, it's a little bit clearer for Docker PS. Usually if you have some space, it's no big deal. It's actually pretty easy to see if your screen is wide enough. I don't know a way to use Docker to format this in a way that is a little bit easier to read. I don't think so. I can run copy test, cat. Oh, okay. I see what you're asking. Yes, absolutely. Yes. The same way, instead of adding the cat command up here, yes, I could add in the cat to the end of the run command, and it would pass that in as an exec command basically into the container, and I could have done it that way. Absolutely. Cool. Let me actually see how to. Let's see, -v or volume. Let me see if -- mount. Okay. Multiple key value pairs, comma, string, type. Oh, I would have had to give it a type volume. Oh, that's really annoying. This didn't used to be the case. Oh, that's really annoying. Oh, I don't think you have to pass in all these flags. There's a lot of flags you can pass in, but I think I would have to give it a source and a destination, which is annoying. Oh, so they changed that. They changed that a lot, which is really annoying. And let's try that really. Let's just do that just so you can see it. You can see it mount to a local container. Let's clear this. And let's go back to the one we ran. And it looks like I just give it a dash. Looks like I give it a -- mount, like I thought. And then it looks like I'm gonna copy and paste what they gave me. And target is gonna be home/output. But source is going to be, what did I call this? Persist data. What I call that file, that directory? Yeah. Let's see if that works. Maybe this is how you do it. Looks like that's how you do it that way, but I think that might have pushed it to my Docker volume and not to. I might have to give it a different flag here for local. It's the word Control W. Oh yeah, for sure. I use Control W a lot. The only problem is I have to be very picky about the shortcuts that I use because of the way that it interacts with VirtualBox. I do not have mouse integration turned on right now, or the keyboard integration turned on. I need to install all the little what's it called, like the guest OS stuff. But yeah, my mount is, let's see, why isn't this working? Let's Google this because I want to see, because it's changed. I'm interested to see how you do it. I only know how to do it through Kubernetes and through other orchestration tools like Compose and ECS. Docker mount local volume, local directory. Let's check that out. Not in local volume. This is Compose top. No, I don't want this. Oh, maybe do I have to do it this way? What? This was right. How come that didn't work? Let's try that again. Let's see. Let's do R persist R. This looks. Let's give it back to the dash single V. Single V, and maybe because I did not give it a persist dash data. That's not it either. But that worked. Did I spell that right? Is there another? Huh. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Definitely spelled it wrong. How come all the other ones worked? Persist data slash. Either one of those put a log in there. Oh, let's see. You have a slash that's looking in the root folder. Yeah, I saw that. I knew that. I just wanted to check something because it wasn't. I thought I did it without it before. And I want to check it out. Actual folder is spelled wrong. Ah, okay. But see, and I spelled it wrong here. The folder is definitely spelled wrong. But if I do first data and I remove the slash, I did that. Wrist dash data. It didn't put it in there for some reason. Not sure why I didn't put it in there. That's I have mine spelled right and it's still not working for me either. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe the whoa. Okay, sorry. I see that was a key bindings. I actually hit a key binding and it resized my whole VM window. But that's fine. That's not a big deal. You can, the important concept is to know that you can mount this either to a volume or to a root folder. Again, volumes are a relatively new thing. And I don't know the way to map a single container to that, just because the way you're generally going to be interacting with Docker, you likely won't be running any of these run commands. You'll probably be doing it through some type of orchestration platform, which you're about to hop into shortly. It's important to just know that you can do it. But it's really interesting. Do I have to give it like do I have to give it like the full file path or something? Or no. This is just my curiosity playing around right now. You have to get it in there. It doesn't need to be interactive. Persisting Data is, I'm pretty sure, what we need. And it's running for sure. It's definitely running. No problem. Oops. Let me give this a different. We put a slash at the end of here. No, man. Okay. Home output is what we want. Okay. I just want to mess around with that to see. That's really odd. Maybe it's some kind of weird permissions issue. But that's interesting. Just a little bit confusing. I wanted to solve it just so that no one else has to like struggle. But cool. Yes, you can map it to a volume, or you can map it to a local directory. Maybe we'll figure that. Well, maybe we'll figure that process out. Then we have Persisting Data with no path. I think it's putting it in the Persisting Data volume. Yes, and see, and that's why I put the slash on it originally. It is. I think it is putting it in the Persisting Data volume. But even when I gave it a slash before, so even when I give it a slash before, it works. So if I do, okay. So when I give it a slash, so you do have to give it a file system path. So when I mistyped it and I put the slash, it actually created this directory for me in my root directory, which is weird. So that was working, but why? I tried to do a dot slash, but it wouldn't work. So you can't do a dot slash. So you must have to give it an entire file path here, which is really weird. I didn't know that you had to do that. And so I must have to go something like slash. Actually, we'll do this. We'll do pwd to check out where we are. We'll copy that. We'll get this Docker run here. We will paste this right here, and whoops. And now that worked. So it looks like you have to use entire file paths. Learn something new tonight. You have to use the absolute file path. Maybe there's a way to do a relative file path. I don't know. I could have sworn I used to, before they removed the dash mount, I am pretty sure I've always used relative file paths when I was doing that. But yeah, so we figured it out. Excellent. That works out. That makes me feel a lot better. I was like, man, like, did they really remove this functionality or change this functionality that much? But it doesn't look like they did. We were just using the wrong path parameter there. So log.txt. So that looks like that works. So that can keep running the data. We can have another container that comes along and consumes that data, or application can consume that. But yeah, we just wrote a quick container to run a simple shell script. There are better ways to do this, but we were able to do that. Perfect. So now let's move into, so we persisted that data. I was gonna mess around with a few other container images. But I think I'm gonna show you some of this persisting data along with the Docker Compose stuff. But now you can see here, we messed around here. I actually don't think I showed you last time. Let's run this again, actually. I'm gonna give it a -t. I think I showed you that you could exec into a container. Copy test.
Here's the answer.
Oh. Okay, so I'm in the container now, and I don't think it actually ran, but I'm in the container, and I can go ahead and I can execute things. So let's say I went to /home output. Take a look up here. I'm in the container now, and again, these volumes are linked, and I could just start making things. So I could touch file.txt. I could touch file5.txt. You can see they all get created here, which is pretty cool. Just want to show you where that relationship was. This here is my local system. This is my, this is the machine that Docker is running on, but this is my local desktop. And I'm in here, I'm actually logged into this container, or I'm exec into this container, and I'm running commands against it. And you can see there's this mapping here between the two. So that's pretty cool. And that becomes very important later on as we get into this next piece. So I'm going to remove all this stuff. Remove all that stuff. It's all gone from there. And if I do a docker ps. This is important. Because when I ran that bin bash, it dropped me into here. And remember, a container only does the process that it's meant to do. That /bin bash that I gave this, it actually went through and it that's a command itself. That's to execute it's to invoke one instance of the bash shell. And I was in there and I was doing my stuff, and then when I exited, it deleted because that is not a long-lived process. I basically, when I exited, I ended that process and it was deleted. I've had people try to learn this, and they log into a shell to try to do some things and make some changes internally to that shell, but they're not it's not changes that need to be I guess not changes that necessarily need to be saved locally, but they'll install some things, they'll make some changes, and they'll leave and it'll die, and they'll be kind of confused on what happened. Again, remember that a container is designed is the key word, to only run one process. Once that process completes, it's served, it's done its duty, it served its purpose, and it goes ahead and it exits. We could start that back up, so you actually could get back into the container. So we're gonna talk about some of the container management stuff now. If I do a docker exec PSA, I can see a bunch of containers here, and all these are just bash. There's not really anything to do here, but if you were running a container and you're doing some work to it, and it dies, and we're gonna start an Nginx container in a second so we can see this. But if it dies, you can actually start that container back up. You can get the name. This is why the names are so important, or the IDs. I can take this and I can take one of these and I can grab Focus McCarthy, and I can copy that name, and I can say, hey, the things that I was doing in there, I need that container running again. Let's just pretend it was long-lived. You could just go to docker start container, and it'll go ahead and it'll run it again. And if I do a docker ps, you can see it's not there, but that's because that container wasn't long-lived. If it was a long-lived container, that would start your container back up, which is great. So if you do log into a container, let's say I was doing a bunch of work in there. Let's say I was debugging some things because I was trying to build out a container for my company, and I wanted to make sure things were working right. So I logged in, and maybe I installed Vim so I could edit some files within there, and I installed maybe I needed to reach out to the internet, so I installed curl and some other internet tools in there. But then I exit out of it, and I think that I've lost it. You can check docker ps-a to see everything, and you can go ahead and you can restart a container which didn't work, or which stopped. I don't know if you can, let's find out. I don't know if you can pass in an exec command. Like, I don't know if I can start it and then bin bash into it. I cannot, so I can't do that, but you can start them up that way. And if we go into Docker, you can see some of the other commands that you can use to kind of manage these containers. So obviously you can stop a container. If you want a container to die, or to not be running, you can stop it. You can also achieve the same thing with the kill command. So if you do a docker kill, it stops, and it stops one or more running containers. It just kills them. I don't think I think stop does a graceful stop, I believe. There's a difference between these two. I know with kill you can do more than one, but I think it sends a different exit signal to each of them. So that's something you have here. And then again, we have RM for removing a container, and then RMI to remove an image. Remember, there can be no containers that exist that are based off of that image for you to delete it. So like if for all of these that we have in docker ps-a, for all of these, you can see here the image that all of these ran off was this copy test image. Every single one of these would have to be deleted before I could delete that copy test image. So if I did a docker RMI copy test, I can't do it. It lets me know it's unable to remove because it's in use in these other containers that aren't removed. I could go ahead and I could delete this container, and then it would just tell me the next container and the next container. But all of these would have to be gone before I was able to remove copy test. That is very, very important, that the containers need to be removed before you can remove the image. That trips up a lot of people as well. Now that we got volumes, where you can remove the make directory command from the Docker file as long as what you're doing the mount to. Yeah, I actually don't know if I can do that. And we'll check that in a second, but I actually don't know. Oh, yeah, the redirect should create. I do think the redirect creates this. So yeah, you're probably right. I think we can remove this. And let's go ahead and save it and see. That's the fun part about this stuff. I'm actually not sure that's gonna work, but we're about to find out. And run. D, take off the min bash. Okay, that does work, so we don't need it. It looks like this redirect command will go ahead and make that folder for us. I wasn't sure if it would, actually. So cool, that's good to know. So thank you for that. You can absolutely do that. Makes it pretty simple. And then, but not SSH container. So we'll still run the script and add the files to the persistent. Cool. All right, we've got it here. Now we've got our script. Let's dive into, what do we do? We learned how to stop. We learned how to start. We learned how to run a container. We learned how to stop a container with the stop or the kill command. I think there's like a restart in here as well. Let's make this a little larger. Actually, never remember all the options we have here. So, do we have restart? Yep, we can restart one. So if we have a service that's running weird, I guess you can restart it. I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but you can go ahead and you can restart a container. But one of the biggest things, again, is to remember the relationship between these two things. You cannot remove an image until all of the containers are removed, and you can use this rm command to go ahead and remove those containers. You can stop, you can start. That is, I think that's all you need to know right now to be able to manage containers. Stop, start, restart, and remove them, containers and images. Pretty straightforward. Now let's hop into container orchestration. So containers are great on their own. I definitely think you should go ahead and, you know, do what you can, mess with some apps, and we're gonna spin up some individual apps shortly. But you can use some cool tools like container orchestrators like Docker Compose, which is the simplest of them all, up to Docker Swarm or to ECS or any of the other services, all the way up to Kubernetes, to be able to orchestrate containers. So what is container orchestration? So just like, let's look at like a conductor, orchestra conductor. Is that what they're called? They're called the conductors, or who leads an orchestra? But yes, this person who stands up and tells each of the sections what to do. This is the same thing that a container orchestrator does. It basically, you give it some information, you write up these files that describe, you know, what you want. I want this many containers of this application, and I want them to be configured this way. The same, very similar to how we were talking about infrastructure as code. This is absolutely considered infrastructure as code, but the same way we kind of wrote those files, the same way we do this here. We would say, hey, we want this many Nginx containers running with these things attached to it. We want this many Node.js applications running that are doing these specific things. Container orchestration tools are the same thing, and they do exactly that. They take care of that information for you. So how annoying would it be to, I'm an organization and I'm running a bunch of containers, and maybe that script that we just wrote, maybe this has to run, maybe this is something that has to run on a certain amount of servers, maybe 10 times an hour or something like that. Maybe this is attached to 20 other applications. Maybe one of the applications requires us to have 30 containers running at a single time. Are you really going to log in, and are you really going to run, you know, 30 of these run commands to get those applications working? And if you do that, how do these things talk to each other? How does this script talk to this other application that's going to be running? And it gets really confusing. Like when you think about managing one container at a time, it gets very, very daunting and very, very difficult. So the goal of container orchestrators is to allow you to manage multiple containers at once, and to be able to manage the connections in between them, and for you to not have to worry about that. Because what I didn't show you in these Docker run commands is that there are a lot of other options. There's ways that you can set up networks within these, and again, you saw me add ports before, and we're still gonna do a little bit of that, but there's so many options here, and these tools have been developed out of the need to not have to do that. You know, again, it would be really annoying to have to do that if you wanted to run a bunch of containers. It wouldn't feel like a huge benefit at all, and it would get too difficult to manage. But that's where Docker Compose comes to the rescue. So Docker Compose is the simplest container orchestrator. I know some people who don't consider it a container orchestrator, but I absolutely do. And I think they say that right on the site, what it is. But it's a tool. So Docker Compose, I'm gonna send this in the chat. It is a tool for defining and running multi-container Docker applications. So if you have an application that needs to run multiple Docker containers at once for it to run, Compose is good for this. I will show you an example of this shortly. WordPress is the one that we're going to use, and it's the one that they use. But it needs a couple of different things. It needs MySQL, it needs PHP, it needs Apache as well. It needs all those things to produce this one singular application. And again, containers are designed to run one process inside of them. So ideally, that is 3 containers. In this instance, it's actually only going to be 2 containers, but Docker Compose allows you to do that easily, and it manages again that networking between all of them. It allows you to easily be able to spin them up, spin them down, restart services, get information about them as well. But what we're going to do here, this is going to be as simple as it gets. The other container orchestration tools on top of this basically help you manage a lot. They give you a lot more features. They help you manage again the number of containers running in each piece of the application. So maybe we have a multi-part application where we need a ton of this kind of container, but only 1 or 2 of these and 30 of these. We can do that with that, and it provides some cool options for not having to interact with the services. A lot of the orchestrators will, make sure that there are 30 containers running. If it still starts to die, it'll correct that problem for you. It'll keep trying to spin up new containers. Docker Compose won't provide that for you. If we spin up something to run, it'll try to spin it up. It'll do its best. If something dies, it'll just be dead, and then we'll have to interact with it manually to be able to resolve that situation. But it is a great tool. It's very commonly used for developer environments and local developer environments. So if you're a DevOps engineer, infrastructure engineer, or even a developer, and you're starting a project and you're trying to figure out how to be able to get people on the team up and running very quickly, Docker Compose is usually the go-to for getting those things up and running. You can write a simple Docker Compose file, throw it right inside of your repository. Everyone will have access to it, and if you set it up properly, all your developers will need to do is run Docker Compose up, and it will spin up this environment for you, and it'll spin up this application, this multi-piece application for you, which is really, really nice. Saves a lot of time once you get it set up fine. Cool. So that's what Docker Compose is, and actually I didn't paste it in here yet. Would you avoid Docker Compose for production? Absolutely. Well, actually, I take that back. No. Yes, I would. I'm gonna say that I don't want to give you too many caveats. Yes, I would avoid Docker Compose for production. If it is just you trying to run, run your website, and you have a Node.js application that runs a site, through Express, whatever. I think that's okay. I think it is. I don't think running Docker Compose is any different from just installing the application and worrying about it that way. I don't think. I think it actually provides you a little bit of increase in features. Like I think being able to just run Docker Compose up or down helps, but it doesn't. You don't get the benefits of containers if you are using Docker Compose in production. To be 100% honest, and again, I would not use this for anyone, like any enterprise site or any company of any size that's really important and you're trying to utilize containers. Docker Compose is not what you should be using to run in production. But again, if it's just for you, if it's just for you and your company, this is very similar to just running the application as normal. So I think that's fine. I do think that's okay. It's like you're an active composer or song on the orchestra. Absolutely. It really is like it's up there telling, hey, container over here, do this at this time, and container over here, do this at this time. And real orchestrators will say, hey, we're supposed to have 30 horns over here on the left. I hear 10 horns not blowing. Come on, get going. You need to go ahead, and it'll spin up those 10 horns over there for you. It'll correct that for you. It'll kill containers that aren't feeling well, containers that aren't doing well. It'll kill them off, and it'll spin up new ones in its place. So it's really, really nice. It makes it so you don't have to worry about a lot. You kind of just set it up and kind of let it do its thing, which is pretty cool. I manage Docker containers that use Docker Compose for applications that develop financial systems. Yeah. Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to say no not to use Docker Compose in production, but you don't get, I think it's difficult to get some of the benefits of Docker. It's very similar to just running the application as normal, to installing it and running it as normal, for sure. We're moving towards having a setup in Kubernetes. Yeah, I mean, Kubernetes is a big shift. Kubernetes has a lot of pieces, but if someone's already done the work to determine if Kubernetes is the right option for you, if it is the right option, Kubernetes will provide you a lot of peace of mind in what you're doing. You know, again, high learning curve, but your system will be a lot more resilient, a lot more reliable once you get that set up. Cool. So let's go ahead and get Docker Compose installed. So I think they usually have a script on here. Find latest version of reference here. But this is kind of what a Docker Compose YAML looks like. Pretty simple, but we'll get it installed first, and then we'll take a look at the example that they give us. So to install it, there's a bunch of stuff, and I'll give you the install page as well. It's a really simple deployment. Compose is sort of okay. Yeah. It's simple and perfect. Well said there. If it's a pretty simple deploy, Compose is sort of okay. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's fine. It can be fine given the right situation. But we'll install it. So I think almost everything. This is just a little binary, I believe. On Linux, it's just this little curl command. So I'm gonna copy this, and it's gonna give me the latest stable release. I think on Mac and Windows, it comes by default when you install. Like for Mac, if you've installed Docker for Mac OS, it'll come by default. Or if you install Docker Toolbox, it'll come. Same thing for Windows. I think they both come by default, so you don't need to go ahead and install these if you're running Mac or Windows and you already have Docker installed. But for Linux, unfortunately, we do have to go ahead and install this. So doesn't matter where you are. Go ahead and install this, and we can take a look at the command that it's doing really quick. It's using curl. So remember you were using wget to download things from the internet. Curl allows us to do the same thing. It basically is downloading whatever's at this URL. Right here, it's evaluating some commands here, and it's going to fill those in real time. So we can paste these real quick. uname-s will give me, what my operating system is. uname-m will give me my architecture. So if I didn't know if I was 32-bit or 64-bit or ARM, I could run uname-m, and that'll give me my architecture. And so basically that fills it in here, and it makes it Linux-x86-64, and it knows where to grab that from. Architecture is pretty important, so that grabs the right one. And then the -o tells it where to output this download, and it's basically downloading this to user local bin Docker Compose. That user local bin is in my path, so I should just be able to type in Docker Compose. It's actually probably not executable, so I'm gonna chmod. Actually, let's see what they tell us to do. I don't want to jump too far ahead. So after that, and that's exactly what they said. They said we downloaded it. Let's go ahead and make it executable here. So we're gonna paste it in. And now if I type in docker-compose and hit enter, it gives me some Docker Compose commands, which lets me know that it's installed properly. But you can see here, we have a lot of the same options. Not all of the same options, but a lot. We have build, we've seen build, we've seen exec, we've seen kill, we've seen PS and restart and RM. So we have some of those options, and we're gonna see how those are used. But the big things that we have here are down and up. This allows you to deploy an entire stack of containers for your application. And so we'll set that up in a second. Well, containers seem to be at the top of abstraction in regards to orchestration. Yes. What are the programs would you say abstract the most complexity away? Thinking of version control, automation, CI/CD, and etc. It is a good question. It does. The question definitely makes sense. What tools abstract the most things away? Containers for sure at the top. I think that so surprisingly, just looking at my screen, I think that IDEs do a little bit of that as well. Again, for for version control, etc. But nothing does it in the same way as containers do. Let me think about that a little more. I don't know if there's any tools that really abstract that quite as much away from what you're doing. Maybe you can make that argument about some of the I was gonna say some of the infrastructure as code tools, but like you got to know that's like I'm not sure there's anything that does that quite the same. Let me think about that a little bit. Has to have a good starting point to build foundations. Yep. Yeah, you threw that out there, Shug. Yeah, Terraform and Ansible. I think you can make the argument for them. I don't think it's quite as wild though as containers are. But I'll definitely get back to you. I think there are some technologies out there. I need to look and see what think about that a little bit deep. Using containers, someone else made, but if you're building containers, you still need to have a lot of in-depth knowledge. That is true. If you're building containers yourself, you need to know a lot. Networking control plane, yes. So networking control planes have already done that with software-defined networking, especially with the cloud. But yes, I think they will move further that way as well, for sure. But cool. Let's grab. I'm gonna go ahead and grab I'm just gonna Google the Docker Compose file for WordPress. So actually, just a quick intro to WordPress for anyone who is not sure what WordPress is. This is usually a good go-to in the beginning because WordPress has a couple different pieces. It's a weird one because WordPress can be installed in like 5 minutes anyway. Like they have their famous 5-minute install, but it's a good thing to start with when you're learning this because the basic instructions to do it, even though again it's like a 5-minute install, you got to do a couple different things. You got to move some files around, you got to download some files, you got to move them around. You'll see some wgetting here and some unzipping, but WordPress needs a few things to run. First off, WordPress is a content management system. It's a CMS that runs a substantial part of the internet. There's a very significant number of sites that are running off of WordPress, in the totality of the internet. And it's a great tool. It makes it easy for people who don't know how to build sites by hand to be able to build sites and manage content on them. It is pretty great in that aspect, but it's built on there's a few of these it's built on PHP. PHP is the language that they use, and there are a few of these PHP basically MySQL backed systems like WordPress, which kind of suck, but yeah, you need PHP to run it. You need PHP, you need Apache or any web server. You can use Nginx as well, and you need a database, MySQL. So you need 3 different applications here. Generally, there's a few different ways to install PHP. You can basically kind of install one along with your web server, which is I think how the default one does it. But you can also run if you're using Apache. If you're using Nginx, I believe you have to run PHP as its own binary or own service. And there's a package or a tool called PHP FPM, and it'll run it as its own binary off to the left. But there are basically 3 different things that you need to run as a part of this, and this is usually a good way to show that. But you kind of to get it installed, you can see here we've got a lot of steps here. And if it was your first time, even though it's a famous 5-minute install, this would take you a while to run through. There's a decent amount of stuff here, and if you ever want to take a look at it, you can go ahead and take a look at this. But remember, I said that one of the cool things about Docker is that people can build these images and share it with people. And you can go ahead and steal those things, or not steal them, but you can use them. They're available to share. So you can always go to Docker Hub and check if there's something available for you. So type in WordPress. And when we click WordPress, we can see here there's an official image. That's great. We're usually looking for an official image. We click in and we've got some options here, and we can do Docker pull WordPress. Now, what sucks about this is if you don't know anything about WordPress, you might think that that's all you have to do and you can run this WordPress image and it'll run. That is not true. This WordPress image contains Apache, and PHP in one container. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's really difficult to split this out, actually. Like I've seen a weird article about someone splitting it out, which was they had to do a lot to be able to do it. But if you're using FPM, you can split it out. Really annoying. Don't do that. But they're together. But that's all you get. So you get PHP and you get the files that are necessary to run WordPress. All that is useless though without a database. So the database that backs this is MySQL, and so we need that as well. But if this is your first time messing with this, you might hop in again and download that and figure out why it's not going to work. So we can actually I'll leave it here. Maybe they give us a run command. I can go ahead and just try to run it. So watch, if I try to run just the WordPress container, let's grab the command they say that we have here that we can use. If I paste it in, I'll call it test WordPress. I actually don't need to give it a name, but let's try to run that. And what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and download the WordPress container for me, because I do not have it locally at all, or I could have pulled it myself. So it should prompt you for DB info. So it does prompt you for DB info if you have everything set up, but this will not. Well, it shouldn't. I don't. Maybe it will actually. That's pretty interesting. Let's find out. I didn't even think it would run. To be 100% honest with you. So let's go ahead and check. So it's running on port 8080. So let's go ahead and check localhost 8080. I'm assuming it's gonna give me a database error. Oh, this is actually pretty nice. So this part will never work. Okay, and so that's pretty interesting. So the application will run. So just like that, we were able to get WordPress kind of installed. The files are installed and PHP is installed and it's running inside of this container. But this is backed by a database. And so right now it's asking me for database information to connect to. And right now, because we don't have a database, there is nothing to connect to. I could change this as many times as I want, but nothing was ever going to work, and we're always going to get to this error page right here. We're always going to get this error page. I didn't even think we would get this far, which is pretty cool. So I like that. That's pretty dope. So again, we have another piece of our application that we want to run. Now, generally, this is a weird example. WordPress is a weird thing to use because generally you don't want to Dockerize. Generally, you don't want to really Dockerize your databases. It's not best. We talking about Docker best practices. You usually don't want to containerize your databases, but it is okay to do that. Again, because of volumes and persistent local storage, you can just use that to run the binary to be able to run the actual database service. But it's not generally. You probably shouldn't do it. Well, for if you're working for a company, generally stay away from this, doing this. But yeah, we can go back into our compose file and let's see how we can get a database installed. So we know that we need MySQL, and let's go ahead and I'll just type in MySQL right here, and let's see what we have. And I know this MySQL, so I'm gonna go ahead and Docker pull MySQL. So we haven't touched Compose yet. We're still just doing this with Docker. And so what I could do is I absolutely could, I have WordPress running. I could absolutely spin this up. I could go in and I could set some things up. I can create my database. I can point some stuff at it, and it will work. Actually, let's scroll down a little bit. I need to pass in a password. So containers generally use environment variables for configuring certain things about them. So one, I don't know if we ever talked about environment variables, but we talked about variables plenty of times in the coding section. And again, variables are simply a changeable representation of a value. So in Linux, there are tons of environment variables that are set up by default. So on your computer, if you type in, if you're running Linux or Mac, I believe, and you type in env, this will list all the available environment variables for you. So all it is a string that is set to a value here. So the environment variable shell for me locally is set to /bin bash. So so whenever I reference shell, it knows to reference bin bash. Same thing for all these other things. These are all set up for you by default. I didn't set up any of these, but at any given time, you can set up an environment variable yourself. So let's say I had a special command or something, or a message that I wanted to keep around. I want to set an environment variable of mastermind, and I want to set it to something like hello all. I don't know why it would be set to that, but I could. If I hit enter and I type in env again, actually it should be in here somewhere. I thought it was gonna be last for something. Let's grep for it. But if I do echo $, mastermind, you can see here the value of it. If I spit out the value of it, it is hello all. So it's just a variable. It's a variable that exists for the entire environment. So the whole computer basically has access to, or this session at least, has access to this variable. So containers use this to be able to set up settings. And so we will build these containers in the configuration files for the application. They usually pull in these environment variables so that it can, so that you can basically set up how things are done. So in here, you can see here the example they give is if you want to be able to set what the root password is, because it's important that you set a password, you can do a -e, which stands for environment variable. And the same way we just set that mastermind environment variable, we can set up an environment variable here. They have specific ones that you need to reference. And they'll tell you, there's somewhere you can go to get this information in the Docker file to find out which environment variables are available to you. And you basically set it and it'll set that inside the container. So that is great. But it's actually pretty cool because right here, we actually have a Docker Compose example on how to spin some stuff up, but we're going to use the WordPress one instead. So like I said, it would get really annoying if we spun up that one container, which we already did. So we already have the WordPress container running. It would be very annoying if we had to do like Docker run. Actually, you know what? Not so annoying. Let's do this real quick. Let's try this out. How much time we have? We have a little bit. Let's do this so you can see how much easier it is when we don't have to do it this crappy way. Where was I? MySQL Docker Hub. Let's run their very basic one here and paste it. And my password's gonna be password1, because that's the most secret password you could ever make. And I don't need to do that. Name is gonna be some MySQL. Run requires at least one argument. Oh, I didn't give it the name of the. All right, so now it's going to initialize the database, and it's going to create an entire database service here for us. That was dumb. I should have given it some flags to run in the background, but I did not give it flags to run in the background. So now it is going to do this. Yeah, so it's gonna run there. I'm gonna open up something else so we can check this out. So now I have two things running. So I actually have two applications running. I have WordPress and MySQL. So theoretically, what we would be able to do is point the information that's right here. We'll be able to point that at the container that we're now running. Now, the problem with that is it will not work if we try to do it now for a number of reasons. And this is why orchestration tools are great. For one, this is running, but it is not actually exposed anywhere on my machine. So like port 3306 is what MySQL runs on, but it's kind of just running. It's not exposed anywhere from my local machine to be able to grab that information. It's although it's running, it's not spitting the information anywhere out that's accessible for my local machine. Two, because of this, that's the biggest reason. Two is that there's no networking in between these. So I would have to do it in a different way. Again, I could do it through that local host paradigm if I wanted to, but these are actually, there's no networking in between these. And if we're running this application, we would actually want these to be networked. We would want them to exist kind of within the same network for a lot of reasons. But yeah, they don't work they just don't work that way. out of the box, and we would have to pass in, basically just pass in. It wouldn't be too difficult, but basically to those Docker run commands that we ran, we would have to pass in some more information to be able to set these things up, and then they would actually end up working. But you can see that we would have to put it together 2 fairly extensive Docker run commands just to get them to work. And then if one died, we'd have to run that same command again to find the command that we ran, and we have to mess around with that. We don't want to have to worry about any of that. So we are going to go back into this over here. Let's go ahead and make a new folder called Docker Compose, and we'll open up a new file in here, and you got to call it Docker. Well, you don't have to, I lied, but you'll commonly see the first one called Docker Compose.yaml, and you can see that we have a little whale here because it knows how to handle these things. So I'll stop there for a second. Does anyone have any questions about what we've done so far? Looks like there's been a lot of conversation. Done a WordPress install in that long. Yeah, WordPress on the LAMP stack we're in. So much stuff just happened. I appreciate how much just went. Yeah, I probably should have broke that down a little bit more. Even without the DB, that was a lot of compatibility, dependencies, etc. Yes, so I did show you the install page for MySQL or for WordPress. Did I still have it up? I might have got away from it, but that install page, there were a lot of options. There was a lot of things on how to install WordPress. These basic instructions, there's a lot of stuff to read here. There's a lot of dependencies that need to be added. There's a lot of things that need to be set up, creating a database user, all this stuff needs to be set up. There's a bunch of crap here that you need to do. And again, if this is your first time, if I sent you this and you've never set up WordPress before, it might take you 20, 30 minutes to kind of get through this. Maybe it might even take even longer for you to just get through that piece. To do everything that exists within here, every single thing that is in the entire list that I scrolled down, all I had to do was Docker run WordPress. That's all I had to do. And because basically everything that exists in that walkthrough has been boiled down into a Docker image. You can also go check and see what is in there. It's actually not as complicated. Once you take some time and you get to know this stuff and you're comfortable writing Docker files, there's actually, this actually might look pretty complicated. Let's find out. I actually think this may look crazy. So these are all just Linux commands. This is the Docker file that builds WordPress. And you can see here, it's actually just a bunch of Linux commands. But you can see there's a lot of stuff here. They're installing a lot of things. They're doing a lot of things. They're making a lot of modifications. Now, you wouldn't necessarily need to make all these modifications if you were installing WordPress manually, but a lot of these things do need to happen, and they just add some optimizations in here for this to work well as a container. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on here. And what's funny is this is based off of an entirely other different image that does the installation of Apache and PHP, which is a lot of other dependencies in itself. Like, we could go take a look at this container. Let's go back and take a look at this container and see. So remember everything you just saw, all that stuff. And if you paste this in, you can go back and it doesn't pop up. Why? Go all the way back here. And so let's take a look at what the PHP one looks like. Tags, can I get to the page updates? Can I not see the tags that are here? The available tags. Well, I don't know where to get to. I don't know a good way to. I don't use the Docker Hub that often. But if we went back, there's a bunch of stuff here. But if we went back and we found the GitHub repo for PHP, maybe they don't put this out. I don't know. But we would be able to see that there's a bunch of crap in there that installs PHP and Apache. There's a lot of dependencies and things that get installed before you get to the WordPress section. But we were able to just run Docker run WordPress or Docker pull WordPress and get all those dependencies packaged up. So it saves us a ton of time if we start to learn how to manage these things. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop these containers because we're gonna use Docker Compose to spin this up very fast. Let's do Docker stop both of these. All right, so now we should have no containers running, and we'll go into our, let's move this down one. Cool, now we have 3 screens. All right, we're just gonna Google it, and then we're gonna break down what it is. And actually, it might actually exist inside of, I know they were using this as an example, but we'll do this. We'll do WordPress Docker Compose. And MariaDB is fine. And we'll take whatever thing comes up first. There's a lot of examples for this. There's like a bunch of ways to set it up. But there's a very simple way to do it at first. And we're gonna break down what this is. And so this is actually missing some metadata that might be useful, but right now this works. So we're gonna paste this in, and let's break down what this means. So right now we have this Docker Compose file, and I pasted in some information, and all it does is just like our infrastructure as code stuff, just like the Terraform stuff that we did. All it's doing is it's describing an application, and you basically describe an application through code. In this Compose file, you basically push it into the Docker Compose service, and it goes ahead and it reads through this information, and it gives you what you asked for, basically. So these top level things, it's written in YAML. And remember, I said that's a formatting. That's a way to format a document. It's a superset of something called JSON. You could probably write this in JSON, but I would not recommend that. I believe it accepts JSON. But let's split this up for your for your eyes to break this up, and let's make this a little bit larger. What are we looking at here? So the first thing is WordPress. So although it says WordPress, we can call this whatever we want. And this just gives you a way to name whatever service you're running. So I could call this Aaron's WordPress app. And that will be able to, that's so I can identify what this service is. And it's a WordPress app. Now, the next thing you need is what it's going to be built from. So this is image, and this is where WordPress matters. So we use the WordPress image to spin this up, and this is where we would tell it that if this application, let's say we built, we wrote a Docker file. So we wrote this Docker file over here to run our app. So maybe let's say this was just Aaron's app, and we wanted to build it instead. So you don't always need to use an already created image. You could actually have a line here that says build, and then I would give it the path to where I want it to build. So I could put a dot if this was in this directory. I could do / my app, wherever it's located at. You give it the path, and it will go ahead and it will build from there. So each section is going to have either build or image. Right now we're going to be using image because we're not building anything. We are simply using an image that's already pre-made, and we're using this WordPress image. Now here we have links. So let me send you the Docker Compose version reference. This will give you some other information about what options you have available to you in Compose. Send this really quick about what things you have available to you during Compose. But we got a bunch of cool stuff we can do, and they'll all look like this. So once you kind of get the information, once you kind of start to get it down, it makes it easy to build whatever you want. But we've got links here. So basically, you can link this container, and this does all the networking and stuff, but you basically can link this container to another container. So what we have here is it links, it's got the MariaDB here. We want to link to this container, and MariaDB is right here. And this is just the full name for it. Yeah, MariaDB is the name here. If I change this service name to like Aaron's database, I would need to change this link up here as well to be pointed at the same thing. But I'm actually going to keep everything the same, and we'll just keep breaking this down. And then environment. So remember we talked about setting those environment variables. This is how we pass in the environment variables. So a lot of this is actually very similar. You know, if you run Docker run commands enough and you're passing in different things, you can actually pass in these links, and you can pass in environment variables. And this is basically just a formatted version of what you would run as a Docker run command. And then ports. So I'm gonna make port 80. I'm gonna pass this out on port 80. This is how you set up the ports that you're using. And then volume. So we don't want this. We want, like we're doing, if we're building a WordPress site, we want these files to be available to us. So we don't want them to be removed, because we might be changing them to be able to build the site that we want to build. And so we're going to create a volume locally here. This is going to create a local volume of /HTML, and it's going to mount it into the container var www/HTML. And then now we get to a whole nother app. So we can actually add a bunch of other stuff here. Like all this isn't required. You don't need some of these sections. Like you only really need just the image or the build. Everything else is optional, and you can set that up how you want. And there are more things you can add in here. But down here we have the MariaDB, and you can see this doesn't have everything that this has. But we have MariaDB here, so we're going to run this off of a MariaDB image. So MariaDB is the same thing as MySQL. It is a drop-in replacement for MySQL, so you can replace MariaDB with MySQL if you'd like. And then we're going to set up some passwords here. We can set the password to whatever we wanted here. We set that up, and then we would set up a same volume. But what I want to show you is I don't want you to be proficient at writing Docker Compose YAMLs, but I want you to see that as soon as you have a Docker Compose YAML written, once you take your time to write it, all you have to do to make it work is do a Docker Compose up. And when you run this, it'll go ahead and it'll try to execute it. Now, we're going to fix this in a second, but it's basically letting us know the compose file, Docker YAML, is invalid because WordPress ports is invalid. So it tells us what's wrong with it, which is really nice. It'll go ahead and it'll read through, and it will tell you what is wrong. This is incorrect because we just need to make this. If we read through the thing, we could just do this. We'll save this. This should work. And when we run Docker Compose up, what it does is, because we gave it images, it actually checked for WordPress, and it says, hey, you actually already have WordPress locally. I don't need to do anything with that. But when it gets to this piece, it says, hey, MariaDB, I don't know what MariaDB is. I don't have it locally. I'm going to go ahead and reach out to the Docker Hub. I'm going to get the latest version of MariaDB. And it goes through and it does that. And after that, you can see it completed here. And then after it downloaded everything, it went ahead and it tried to spin up our application, our two-part app. We have two services here. We have MariaDB and we have WordPress. So we have our two services, and that's essentially two different containers that should start. And you can see here, it tries to spin up them both. It lets us know Docker Compose MariaDB and Docker Compose WordPress, and it gives us an error here on the WordPress. Let's read through what the error is and why it gave us this error. So it says it cannot start because driver failed, external activity, endpoint, Docker Compose WordPress, error starting, userland proxy, port 80 is already in use. So basically this is telling us that port 80 is already in use, and I'm trying to use port 80 and it's telling us it's already in use. Why is it already in use? So you can check out what's using ports on your computer by using the netstat command. I'll do toolpin, grab 80, and I can see here that something's already taken up port 80 here. Usually it'll tell you what's doing it. It'll usually tell you like Nginx or something. I don't think I'm actually service. I wonder if Nginx starts every time. Okay, now it's not. Yeah, so it looks like Nginx. I wonder why it didn't tell me Nginx was using it. Usually it tells you what thing is taking it up here. But I think Nginx on this VM, I think we actually set it up when we were doing an example to start up by default every time. So it's being used. So if I run Docker Compose up again, it should start. And so because I just ran up the same way you run a Docker, just a Docker run command, it'll run in the foreground by default. So it's running here. It's giving you a bunch of information from the logs. Don't sweat that stuff. You don't need to read through it right now. But it'll run in the foreground. If I stop this, if I hit Control C, it'll actually spin down those two things. You need to add a -D to be able to run it in the background. And I'm going to run in the background, and you can see it started. And if I do a Docker PS, I can see these images. Docker Compose actually has its own PS as well, so it gives you a little bit different output, and it lets me know these are running here, which is pretty nice. So if I go to here and I type in localhost, not 8080, we're only on port 80. We get a WordPress install, and I can continue to click through. Site title, mastermind, ignore the password, can't get to it, username, mastermind IO, password, I'm gonna forget this password, I'll copy it. Nope, I'm gonna make password 1. Don't make your passwords password 1. I was just joking around. Please don't do that. I'm just doing this right now to remember, and you can actually get to this, so it's no big deal. Confirm use of weak password, email, I don't think I need to do it, install WordPress, write an email address, you guys already know my email, at mastermind.io, confirm use of weak password, and install WordPress. And now if I log in, and so actually now that I've already done that, if I just go to localhost, we should get an entire WordPress site. So just like that, we actually have a site that's already up, and I could log in and do some cool stuff. But just with this file alone, you can actually take the exact same file I have. If you have Docker Compose installed on your computer, you can take this exact file right here, and you can put this on your computer, run Docker Compose up, and it will download everything you need, and it will deploy an entire WordPress instance, and it'll make sure that all of the mounts and things are set up locally. You can see here that now there should be an HTML directory here, that all of these are WordPress files that were put in here, so it created this HTML directory locally. And there is a database folder, so actually all my database stuff is actually in this file here as well, for me to use locally. So again, I said this is good for local development. You can see if I set this up properly, and you're a developer and you don't want to have to worry about how the application works and like setting up each individual piece automatically, you can see how great this will be. But imagine if your application had 6 services that it needed to run. Maybe you had a Redis cache in the middle, and maybe you had a web server, and maybe you had again an application that you wrote, like a node application, and maybe you had a database backend, and maybe you had all these different things that your application needed in order to run properly. You would set up a file like this, and again, it might be overwhelming right now, but it's a pretty simple file, and if you're learning the Docker run commands, it's relatively easy to translate it into something like this, and you can go ahead and literally run Docker Compose up, and it'll spin that up. And if I want to stop it all, I can run Docker Compose down. Whoops. And you can see here that I don't need to go through and like get the tag and the name and kill everything and say, hey, like get rid of that. Like you don't have to find each individual piece. You can do it all together as one giant stack. And you can see that the down command does 2 different things. Not only does it stop it, but it removes these containers, which is nice because of what? If I remove the containers, that means if I need to, I can remove the image as well a little bit later. So let's actually, we brought it down, but let's bring it back up and see if we need to run through the setup process again. We'll do Docker Compose up. Whoops. Oh no. That took up, hold on, resize VM. All right, there we go. These key bindings are really killing me. So now that I spin it back up, I actually don't need to, if I refresh, it should still work as is, and I should be able to log in with mastermind IO and password 1 because it persisted all that data. Even though it stopped and removed the containers, it persisted that data locally. So then when it spun up again, it's still using that same data. So all that information is still there and it is usable for me later on. And now we have a full running WordPress post. We can edit our hello world, and we can just type in some random stuff, and we can update it and check out on our main site, refresh and check out our hello world post, and you can see here we've already updated it. So we've created this whole content management system with just a few lines of code. And actually, how many lines of code was that? You're able to do it with, there's no space here, it's only 17 lines to give you this entire application, which would have taken you a lot more time before. And again, like I said, you can go straight to the site that I copied this from, and you can copy and paste exactly what they have, and you can have a running version of this as well. Yeah, we're gonna see, we have a little bit of time left, so we're gonna extend this a little bit, but I wanted to hop in and show you exactly what Compose did. Again, it allows you to define a service that you want to run, to define it, set it up how you want, and it goes ahead and it kicks that off for you, and it manages that for you. So it's a pretty simple application. So let me hop back into the chat. I've been definitely ignoring you guys for the past few. Password if you got for passwords, if anyone is not using a tool like LastPass or not using a tool like 1Password, I highly recommend you hopping in and grabbing those. You can generate passwords for you. So like my LastPass, I can hop in right here. If I want to generate a secure password, I just click generate secure password, and it goes ahead and it generates a secure password for me, which is really nice. And then it saves it for me, and I don't have to worry about remembering it. All of my passwords for all of my things are different. You shouldn't be using the same password for all your applications. You can set the length here. So like for some of the things like all of my AWS passwords for work, they need to be at least 24 characters, and I can generate new ones, and copy it and save it. And it handles all that for you. Just make sure you set a strong master password for the account, and make sure something that you can remember, because it's really difficult to get the account back, or you may not even be able to get it back if you should lose that. And then you have to manually go through and set up all your accounts. But that's pretty important. I know people have asked me, like, how do I manage my password and set up my passwords? I use LastPass just because it has a pretty simple plugin for most browsers as well as your phone. Again, I've used things like 1Password. They all work pretty great. 1Password actually has a really cool desktop app for Mac. I don't know if they do for Windows. So if you're someone who's using a Mac and you like desktop tools, I think that's a pretty cool one. But I'm usually using Linux, so I don't really use it that way. Yeah. Cool. I'll tell you when I give you that password. Password 2. That's a good one. One message deleted. Nightbot got going again. Bad guy 0. Stop the spammers. Ooh. I guess I've been raided. I don't know. I still don't know what this means. I don't know what raids mean. I now know what hosting means. I don't know what raiding means yet. So it seems like I've been raided. Thank you. Welcome everybody. Oh, actually, I didn't check my viewers. Welcome. It seems like we got a lot more people here. Welcome on. Calibration rated you. Dope. That's dope. I don't know what that is. It sounds like you brought people with you. So I genuinely appreciate that. Welcome everyone who is from Calo Creations Raid. Welcome to the Mastermind Academy. We are on week 10 of our sweet DevOps Bootcamp. You can find everything if you want to catch up on what we're doing. If you think what we're doing is cool tonight, you can catch up on everything on YouTube. There should be a YouTube link so you can grab that stuff as well. Yeah, I think we only have like another 4 sessions or something like that for this one. And we will be running this over and over again. So this will not be the last time we're running it. This is the first time we're running it, but we will be running more. We'll not only be running this one, we'll be running a software engineering bootcamp as well, and we'll be running a specific dedicated cloud computing bootcamp as well, most likely with Amazon Web Services, but we might rotate that. We might do one of each of the big three throughout the year, throughout next year as well. So cool. Rated me, someone brought all their viewers here. That's dope. It's a really cool thing. I didn't know Twitch always surprised me with their little integrations and things that they have available to you. Another channel moves all their viewers each. That's pretty dope. Reddit's usually when folks streamers in there. Dope. Yeah. So that's high level what Docker Compose is. Let's see what kind of modifications we may want to do to this. It's not really fun to do anything with WordPress, but this is pretty cool. I'm gonna take a look at the example that they give here. The example that they give here, you can set the Docker Compose version here. If you have some things that are running in an older version, you need to read properly, you can set that up, and this is something that we didn't have to do. So ours doesn't say services, but this services section helps me at least be better able to visualize what's going on. So we can actually take this. I don't know if we're on version 3.7. I don't know if this will work, but let's add this to our code really quick to make it a little more, what I think is a little bit more readable. Go through, and so we've done that. And again, YAML is a way to format things. It's a formatting. So you gotta format it properly, and this should be valid YAML here. And if I Docker Compose down, I should be able to. Cool, that should still work. And so you see how it still works even though I added code to it. Again, this is just kind of metadata and formatting that it's not necessary that it's here. So if you're looking for your own examples, you'll probably find ones that have this up here. Again, they're not super important, but it is nice to know what they are. Again, so services, I've got my services here, which is great. But I could add, again, any number of services. So I could actually do like Aaron's app, and it won't do anything but run, but I can say build. And where is this located? This is located not where we are now. It is located back a folder, I believe. So we are in the Docker Compose directory. It is back, so I think I can just do .. I think, and it'll build that and it'll run it. But I need to give it some volumes, so volumes. We'll give it that same thing. We'll give it the minus. See, this is weird. The volumes here, you can use a relative file path where we couldn't use a relative file path before, but it looks like we are using relative file paths here. So we'll try that out here as well. Ignore my poor formatting. I will format it how all the rest is formatted. So let's go .. pers. Spell that wrong. Perist. I should just fix the spelling of that, but I'd rather just make life hard on myself. And what do we do? /home. What was it? Output. Let's check this Docker file. Output. Yep. Sage. So if I save this, what I can do is I'll delete this log.txt from Persisting Data, and we'll see if that works. We'll see if the local file system works for that. And let's go ahead and let's Docker Compose down. And now, this is something that's interesting about Docker Compose for sure. What you're about to see now. So we're gonna do Docker. We're just gonna do the down command again. And it should, or maybe it's smarter now. That's interesting. Okay, so what I was expecting is previous versions of Docker Compose, and again, I I haven't written a bunch of new Docker Compose in a while, but previous versions of Docker Compose, if you had a stack running, so if I ran a Docker Compose up and I had a stack running, and I had this WordPress stack running, and then I modified it and I added things to it, it actually would spit out to me when I tried to run a Docker Compose down. It would spit out something saying, "Hey, like I'm referencing this Docker file this Docker Compose file that you have here, and like this stack is not available. Like it's not here, and I don't know what to do with it, so I'm not going to do anything." And it wouldn't actually delete anything, or it might delete like one service, but whatever service you made a change to would not get deleted, which is super weird. It would get all weird if you added something new to the Docker Compose file, but it looks like that has been updated and it does not exist anymore. So what happens if we run a Docker Compose up now? First thing we'll see is it fails, which is fine. That's probably because of the build path that I gave it. Permission denied. It's WordPress. Abrugs, Docker examples, Docker Compose. I lost permissions to something. Why? That seems weird. What did it do? Let's figure out what it did here. Me adding Aaron's app. What did we do? Building Aaron's app. Okay, couldn't go backwards. Oh, okay. Docker Compose. That shouldn't matter at all. It must have did like a ls or something. Why doesn't it like? It doesn't have access to what's in this directory, so it gave up basically. But all I'm trying to do is build // is that the right path? Let's confirm. Compose, and if we do, yeah, that's right. Can I give it a? I don't think you have to do this, but I'm gonna try this anyway. We'll see if we can get it to build one directory backwards. But what you can also do whenever you have to build, the up will both build and pull. It'll build an image if you don't have it, or if it needs to be built, and it'll pull an image if you haven't previously pulled it. But what's also nice is, let's say I had 10 things in here, which you can do a Docker Compose pull, and that will go ahead and it'll pull all of the images that are listed in the Docker Compose file. It'll pull them all. It'll pull the latest for all of them, which is really nice. The same thing works for build. Anything that needs to be built, if you Docker Compose build, it'll run through the entire file, and it will try to build whatever's in there. Directory to build in path. It'll try to build whatever needs to be built. And like I said, here I have this should volumes. I'm following the same thing. Trying to go back one. I don't want to give it a full path. I'm trying to get it to data, but it doesn't like. Must specify a build directory and path. The actual build. This is the build directory. I wonder if I can just do .. That'd be weird. It doesn't like this this database directory that's in here. And I bet even if I remove this database directory, it would be weird, but I'm actually going to move this into the Docker Compose. I want to see if it'll build right here. It's going to fail. It's going to fail to build, but I want to see if it'll give me a different reason. And no, there's a permissions thing here. I'm going to give it a sudo. This is a pretty. This is why I like messing around with this stuff, just because of weird stuff like this. A sudo works, but it fails. So I wonder if a sudo .. will work. And let me move this back to where it was. So I'll move this back one directory, and Docker Compose build. All right, so it will build that way. So this is a proper Docker file. So the app that we wrote the little app, and it went ahead and it built that way. We just had to do sudo, so it had access to things. But if we do a Docker Compose up, remember that application that we wrote is going to put something in this persist data folder, even though it says persist data, it's supposed to say persist data. It's gonna put something in there. And if I do docker compose up, we can see everything run, and maybe we can actually see everything that went through. Maybe we can see the logs for my app. We can see here that the app ran fine and exit was zero, a zero execution code. We talked about exit codes is a good thing. And I ran this in the foreground, which is I shouldn't have done. But you can see here now this log.txt is here, and it tells us how many lines are in that thing. So this app, even though they're not related, basically anything that I specify inside of here will run. You can see here, like I didn't have to run. Like this is equivalent to that Docker run command that I did. So if we do clear and we do history, and we look at these things are equivalent. So let's copy this. Maybe we can see here how they map to each other. This is the Docker compose command, the Docker run command we were running right here. And you can see here, this would actually be more equivalent to if I did -- name, Aaron's app. Yeah, cool. And actually be equivalent to if I did this first though. Docker build -t. Yep. All right. So ignore all the stuff above it. We're only focused on this stuff here. So these Docker commands that we could run from the command line, this is what it looks like when it's written out in YAML in a Docker compose format. This right here basically does these two things. We have the name of the app, which is this. This build command references this, and it goes ahead and it builds the image. And then all we have left on here is this volumes section, and that's the -v right here. Right here, we were specifying, actually, let me change this. There we go. Now these things are actually equivalent. So, so it's not crazy. It's actually a lot simpler to specify it this way. I think it is, at least. I think it's much more readable. To me, for the way my brain works, this makes a little more sense, but it's easier to go ahead and start to build out what this stuff looks like if you know how to run it manually yourself beforehand, and you can kind of make sure it works. You can test things, make sure you have the right connections in place. So yeah, so we could just keep adding things like that, and that is a pretty simple thing. Cool. That could be the answer to our security woes. Yes, you would be surprised at well, I bet password with all of the letters off by one is in some kind of dictionary. People who are doing like dictionary attacks. I'm sure that's got to be in there, but it could one letter off. You'd be surprised at how much they help. Yeah, but I also, being someone who's maintained systems for a long time, you would be surprised at how bad people's passwords are. So I'm telling you, don't be that person. Use the tools that we've provided for you. That would use those tools that are out there. Generate a password. I know it's hard to remember, but use those tools to make sure you can keep you can manage them and keep control of them. Because you know, everyone out here is trying to attack you right now. Like the internet is the wild west right now, and a good password helps you out a lot. If you can set up two-factor authentication, please do that. If you can, set up to where your phone is getting a code and you can add that helps substantially. Do those things. I know it's annoying, but get used to doing those things. It'll definitely help you out in the long run for sure. Still permissions on database. Yeah, it did not like the permissions there at all, and the sudo helped, which is weird. I think that's specifically because those permissions problems probably popped up, or not probably, they popped up because your containers by default, they actually run as root. You can see here that these directories that were created by the container, you get these this is actually probably something before I deleted it, before I removed the containers, but it's usually owned by root. This one's owned by www data because that is the user that Apache runs at. runs as, and that container created that. So it will create these. The problem is it will create these files and these resources locally. Like if you map a directory, it'll create them as whatever user in the container made them. So you may not have access to them. You may have to use Sudo. You may have to escalate yourself to root privileges to be able to interact with those things. So that I mean, that's why it happened. That's why we didn't have access, because the users in the group that this gets created as is whatever was running in the container, which is weird. Compose mainly to put all the configuration in files like this. Yes. Yes. The main purpose of Compose is to be able to manage multi-part applications in a file like this. Absolutely, is to be able to write one file like this. And again, I can give this file to you as is, and you could run, well, because we're building something, I have to give you the whole repo right here, but I can give you this file, and all you have to do is run Docker Compose up. As long as I have Docker Compose installed, Google could send me over a Docker Compose file, and if those images are publicly available, and it ran Google.com, and like it ran their entire infrastructure, I would get this file and I would run Docker Compose up, and it would build. It would build all the services that I need to run that without me having to know or do anything, which is really, really nice. So if you do have a cool multi-part application, if you're building something cool, or you're working with a company who says, you know, hey, our developers, whenever we get a new developer in, actually, let's talk about some use cases really quick. You might, a lot of times you'll start a project, or you come into a project who's wasn't using Docker before, and they've been developing, and now they say, hey, we've got you as a DevOps engineer, we've got you as an infrastructure engineer, sysadmin, whoever. We're interested in using Docker, and we're interested in switching over to using Docker, and we want to containerize our environments. So that's one piece. Now you got to break down the application, and you got to write these Docker files that we talked about. So things that look like this, you have to convert the application basically into this so that it builds the application for you. Now, once you get the application built, what you can do is you can write one of these, and you can say, hey, now I'm going to make it so that all the devs, they might have had to, like, you might have some documentation on how to get your developer environment up and running, and it may be something that takes 8 to 10 hours. I've seen dev environment setups that take 8 to 10 hours to do, and so someone onboards, they fill out all their paperwork, and they get their laptop, and they get installed, they get all their stuff downloaded, and now they've got to go through this long document to install all these applications locally. What sucks about that is it takes a long time, for one. It can be frustrating too, but mistakes can for sure be made during that process, and it's tough to troubleshoot someone's system when you weren't the one that was doing anything on it, when you have to kind of audit the things that they've done to be able to figure out what went wrong. It's pretty annoying. It's very time consuming. It's very costly. You can, after everything is Dockerized, you can go ahead and write one of these. And when someone gets onboarded, when a new engineer gets onboarded, all you have to do is have a repo that's out there with all the files and things that you need to build out your images. If your images are stored, in a repository, you can just have this sitting out in a repo. A Docker Compose file sitting on a repo, and you can have the developer download this, and all they have to, all your instructions have to say to this developer is install Docker Compose, and then download this file and run Docker Compose up, and it will work, and it gives them a working development environment, and they can basically, I could go back, let's say this was my code base, let's say this script was my code base, and again, like I said, this is a pretty simple script. And then let's say we want to add in some new functionality, say at the end, echo, you're all done, comma, there. Actually, want to edit the script to have some better output, and we'll set this equal to some kind of variable, which is going to be number of lines. It's a dumb name for a variable, but we're gonna say echo. So there are $ number of lines, line in /user/bin, And let's say, that was my work for the sprint. I developed something new to this application. This is my code base. I went ahead and I developed something new, something great. I don't know if this is going to work actually, but it should work. Actually, let's go ahead and just run this. Slash. X. Cool. Okay. So it does run. I just want to make sure the script actually ran. But what we could do is, our developer develops. All they would have to do now is they would have to just go back and run another build. So I know I made changes to my code base. Now I'll just do another build to make sure all the changes are now in a new container. And then I can run it to make sure it runs. So Docker compose -d, and I run it again, and we'll check out this data, and you can see here now there's different output. The output before just said 219. Now it says what my changes are. So that's kind of how the workflow will work for developers. And now they don't have to worry about, setting up all the stuff locally on the computer. They just set up Docker and it runs for them. And every time they need to make changes, they just go into their code base, which is our script, and you make a change, run Docker compose build again. I never spun this down. I will have to spin the stack down. Well, you basically do down first. You do down, build. It doesn't matter when you build, but down, build, up. And I already built, and I would just build, and then up again, and then we can see our changes. Now that's gonna break everything, but I shouldn't have done anything. Well, it didn't really do anything, but yeah. So it's interesting on how different ways you can use it, but you can see how this could grow. Hopefully you can see how this could grow, and you could add new services, and as your needs got to be more and more, it will be very simple to just add a new thing to it and give this to people, put this up in GitHub, and allow for your developers to have this file and for them to be able to deploy anything that they want. And I think until you actually do it, like until you install, compose, and copy this stuff, like watching me do is one thing, but until you actually copy something and run Docker compose up, to see that you really don't have to do anything. Usually to get things up and running with Docker compose, it's really, really, really nice. Yeah, and so that's the entrance into the world of orchestration. So again, containers are great. We're running 2 containers right now. We're running 2 containers, 3. We ran 3 containers, 1 which exits immediately. A lot of times, a lot of companies are running tens of thousands of containers, if not millions of containers. And that is where things like Kubernetes come in and are able to manage these at scale. And that's the true benefit of containers. When you can manage them at scale is when containers really get to be so great. Like, I do think containers have their benefits here as like development things, and now I don't have to install a bunch of crap on my computer and mess up my computer. I can just do things this way. But it like running them at scale and be able to deploy and manage lots of them at once is really where they become, the big value add for companies. And that's generally what companies are going to have you doing. They're going to have you do either this piece, and that's, containerizing applications and getting them ready to be able to run in a container and setting up development environments with them, or they're going to have you managing them at scale once they move out of the development area. So like development happens, once it gets out of development, how do we use these containers again to serve the public? And that is what you'll be doing as a DevOps engineer. That's what you'll be doing as any kind of engineer who's working with containers. That will be the goal. Wait, you said trillions and zillions, absolutely, for sure. But yeah, that's it for tonight. We're gonna be all we're gonna do on Wednesday is Kubernetes. We're not actually gonna do anything else besides Kubernetes. And I think Kubernetes deserves its own day, its whole entire own day, because you will not be a Kubernetes expert at the end of it at all. But I want you to see it more than I want you to learn it. I want you to see what it can do. We're going to be spinning up some clusters on AWS just because I've been using AWS for the rest of this, and I would like to keep that consistent for you. But we're gonna talk about the main pieces of Kubernetes and like hopefully help you understand like the different pieces there are. And like this, it's funny because Kubernetes is actually a repo that's built out of a bunch of tools as well. So like Kubernetes is not really one thing, but we'll go over each of those things. We'll talk about some of the terminology. We'll talk about kind of what that kind of looks like, and then we're just going to deploy some crap and watch it work. And I'll do my best to go through some examples of like why it's so great. But I think it's best to see Kubernetes at work. To see Kubernetes at work because Kubernetes has a relatively high learning curve, and we're going to go over the things that I think matter most in that 2 hours. So yeah, thank you for joining the stream. I'm really sorry for anyone who was trying to get on last Wednesday. Again, I learned a little bit more about Twitch. I learned the difference between running a rerun and actually enabling your channel to be able to play pre-recorded things. Because originally I had intended to have it be a rerun, didn't have time to do it, and I did not set up my channel correctly before I left for the week. So I am sorry about that, but hopefully you got a lot out of tonight. If this is your first time hopping in for the container stuff, I rendered out the video for the first last Monday was containers part 1, which I think was a pretty good introduction to containers. That will be going up on YouTube tonight. I'm gonna click upload on that right after this. I had to render it out. I rendered it out right before this. So that will be up as well as this one. I'll try to get this one up. It'll be up sometime tomorrow because it'll take some time to render this out and upload it. But yeah, all the rest of the video on demands should be on YouTube for now. And again, I'll continue to upload them until we're done with this. And they'll stay up until the next time we do a DevOps Bootcamp. And then each video will get replaced as we, make an updated stream for each of them. But thank you. That's it for the container stream. I'm gonna stick around. Any questions anyone has, feel free to ask away. Ask all the questions you'd like, whether it be about this topic or any other topic. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. But thank you all for joining. Thank you to whoever raided. Thank you for everyone who was a part of the raid that stuck around. It seems like a lot of people stuck around. So I really do appreciate that. And again, the schedule for this is Monday, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time usually until 10. It's usually between 10 and 11. Sometimes we've gone over. I try to keep it around 10 o'clock because again, I know your time is important. So I want to make sure I don't take up too much of it. I'm trying to make them all 2 hours. I will adjust the next session accordingly. There's been some topics that I wish I could have had more time for, which I think I'm going to just give a new week to. And also coming boot camps will probably be more than 2 days per week. To be 100% honest, just to kind of even things out. I also eventually, after this is over, need to start streaming more than 2 days per week because I'm actually, I didn't care about it before, but I actually think I'm going to try to get to Twitch Partner. And Twitch Partner allows you, you've got to stream like a certain amount of hours over a 30-day period. And right now, I do not stream enough for that, but I'll figure out a way. I'll add some ad hoc streams or I'll add some different series to kind of make up for that as well. But cool. So you said I'm a front-end dev, so a lot of this stuff my coworkers use, but I don't know much about it yet. Cool. Yeah, I think it's always good. You don't always need to. I tell people this all the time. You don't always need to know each of these technologies in depth. Sometimes I think it's just good to have a good understanding of kind of what problem they solve more than anything, just so that you're familiar with it. Again, like even front-end dev tools. Like I'm a DevOps person and I generally deal with the system in the back end, but now currently I'm the tech lead of my team now. I do need to know a little more of those things, so it was pretty interesting having to learn about just all the React stuff and all the tools that JavaScript has available to you to use, and learning what all the common things I heard before, but really truly learning what like things like Babel were, and like getting comfortable with ESLint and all that stuff. Like it's good to know what those things are, but you don't always necessarily need to know what they do, or how to. Well, I think you should know what they do, but you don't necessarily need to know how to use them or know the ins and outs of them. So I think it's pretty cool that you're checking this stuff out. And I think even as a dev, Docker is super applicable. This is not a DevOps tool. This is a development tool. So, as any engineer, I think Docker is one for you to know. I think you should know the basics of Docker for sure. No, I'll also hop on stream. Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely let you know. I actually may put out a poll to see what dates and times are best for people. You try to make times that are going to work for everyone. Also, times that are going to work for yourself. I'm actually working on some ways to. I really enjoy doing this, and I actually wish I could put a lot more time into it and energy. And I'm actually working on ways to do that in 2019 to figure out how I can commit more time to this, and maybe even one day, make this the main thing that I do, because I do love teaching this stuff. I like providing access to this information for people. I want to make sure this information is available. People don't have to spend a lot of money for it, just because tech is just tech has been so great to me. Tech has been so important to me. I like to be able to provide that access to other people, but we'll see if I can get more time. I would like to have more time to flesh out, the things that we're going to be working on. I really want to make all of these things project based. I kind of want to, especially for the DevOps Bootcamp. Whoa. I don't know what that was, and that was really loud. But I would like to make this. I would like to, at the very beginning, make a big project. Take someone's real infrastructure, take someone's real application from the very beginning, and learn about DevOps while we break it down and learn how to install it from learn how to install it, learn how to get it set up. Let's get it running, and now let's get it running now in the cloud, and let's break up the different pieces, and let's distribute it a little bit. And now let's we got it running. Let's containerize it, and let's break down, actually go in and learn the application and break down the application and containerize all the pieces, and set up some CI/CD pipelines with that application, so that it's more contextual. Like all this stuff is great, but if we could put some context around it so people can see how you're using it in real life, that would be great. And I would love to take the time to be able to develop something like that, which would be great. Get a repo to help throw topics and resources up and vet them, etc. Yeah, there is. If you hit exclamation point GitHub, you should be able to see all the stuff. Yeah, we can definitely make a repo for that though, for sure. I think will be great. But digital cluster, awesome. I love meeting new DevOps people. One of the websites we maybe said 17 million hits a month. That's awesome. That's great. That's a lot of hits. Is that in the cloud? I wonder if is that cloud? Is it on prem? Yeah. Best streams, dude. Thank you, Suge. I appreciate it. You've been supporting me since day one. I really appreciate that, for sure. GitLab has CI/CD tools. Yes, GitLab is dope. I like GitLab a lot, and I've been trying to figure out what tooling is right to teach through a lot of this stuff. Stayed away from GitLab originally because of some of the confusion. Because some people, when I was working with some people before for some of the stuff, and they were getting real confused with GitLab and GitHub, even though you can use GitLab for all of it. But maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do a whole GitLab workshop. Maybe I'll try to set up a short little workshop between now and the new year for that. Set that up tonight and send it to me. I'll proofread for errors. Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I'll do that tonight. I'm actually scheduled to hop through and go through, and I got a lot of emails to respond to. If you reached out to me recently, I was at a conference this past week and I did not respond. I kind of unplugged a little bit, which is weird at a tech conference. I didn't really unplug, but I unplugged from all of my responsibilities outside of what was at that conference. I did a lot of networking. So if I haven't gotten back to you, I'm really sorry about that. I will get back to you. Hopefully between tonight and tomorrow, I'm going to be catching up on all that stuff. Sure. Azure DevOps is bad. I heard good things about Azure DevOps for sure. Actually, I met a Microsoft MVP. I found out about this cool Microsoft MVP program, and he talked up the Microsoft Azure pipeline a lot. And I actually like Azure a fair amount. I think they do a great job of naming their products as opposed to what AWS does. So I'll definitely be checking them out to see kind of what cool stuff they have for sure. In the cloud, AWS, that's what so many people are using. I'm pretty big in AWS. That's definitely what I know the most. I'm actually, I'm studying, I'm going to grab my Solutions Architect Pro Cert by November. I hope to have it by the end of November. I'm studying for it now. Haven't been putting as much time as I wanted to into it, but I think I'm about to just sign up for a date, and I think that'll make me have to be ready. But I'll have it before the year's out. Even if I fail it the first time, I'll have it. I'll get it in December if I don't get it in November, but I'll get it before the year's out for sure. Cool. We have the same laptop. If you're referring to me, do you have you're talking about the System 76 Galago, which is a laptop I like a lot. So I do run. So I actually use all the stuff. I'm not beholden to any of the tech giants out here. I have a Google phone, so I do use a Pixel because I like the camera and I like the unlimited photo storage. I use a Windows desktop because I play games, and I need as much as I like Linux, I was dual booting on this, but as much as I like Linux, for some of the other things that I need to do, like production work like this, like video editing, things like this, Linux is not so great for. It's, you have some hiccups, and I need it to just kind of run smoothly, so I use Windows for this. And I was using Mac at work. I'm using Linux at work right now, but I actually may get a MacBook as a secondary laptop for times I need to video edit on the go. Right now, because I have the Linux laptop, I can't video edit when I'm gone, and that's obviously becoming more and more of a need. That wasn't a huge need before, so may take either one whenever I need it. But I'm open to all pieces of technology, except for iPhones are the one thing that I can't get into, and the only reason that I can't get into them was originally because of their port that they were using, the connector they were using, and then the second thing was when I actually did get an iPhone. I got an iPhone for a little while. I can't handle that you don't have like an app drawer, that everything goes on the home screen, and then that you have to then go and like organize it. I despise that. I don't know why. I won't use it until they give me an option other than that, but I don't like that I have to manage the layout of all my apps. Really kind of sucks to me, but yeah, I mean, I'm not beholden to any provider. All right. So you're studying for the same cert, or you're studying for one of the different ones? Use monitoring tools for SOC and NOC. Yeah, so a lot of my career I spent doing NOC. Well, the beginning of my career, probably the first like 4 years, I spent doing like NOC stuff. Worked at some cool NOCs. I worked actually at ZeniMax Media for the Elder Scrolls Online. I worked in the NOC for the Elder Scrolls Online. I joined like right after launch, so that was pretty cool. I'm just kind of being a part of that. So that was fun, but I did a lot of NOC stuff for sure. Oh yeah, same cert, dope, same cert. That's awesome. Let me know. I'm using A Cloud Guru to study for it, and I'm like reading white papers and stuff because everyone says you kind of need to read those things. So that's what I'm doing. But let me know if you find some good study resources. But I find A Cloud Guru to be pretty good. Do you have a spare computer? I do. I have a spare laptop. I don't have a spare PC. I do have a spare laptop. All day, getting serious, dude. Yep. Here comes the war. Yeah, I tell people like Mac PC, I don't really feel strongly about that, but I do like, again, I feel strongly about Android, Apple phones for one reason only, and that is purely because I can't organize my apps. It's the only reason other than that, I would just get whatever phone's great. But again, I like the unlimited storage with Google Photos. I can't wait until tomorrow. I have the Pixel 2. I haven't had a phone for 2 years in a long time. And I've had this for 2 years, and I'm waiting tomorrow. The Pixel 4 should get announced. I'm getting it no matter what. I don't care if it looks terrible. I'm getting it. I'm a Pixel fanboy. Great camera. Google Photos, again, unlimited storage on Google Photos is pretty nice. Oh, dope. Good luck. Good luck on the Solutions Architect Associate. I think you'll be fine. I think I like the format of I like the questions that are asked on the Solutions Architect Associate as opposed to the developer and the SysOps. So yeah, I think that's a good one to get for sure. I actually need to. I might actually sign up for a Solutions Architect Associate later on this month because my certs actually expire early November. And that might be before I sign up for the professional one. So just so I have them, I do plan on going to reInvent this year. So I would like to have I would really like to have my certs in place for reInvent in case I should not pass the professional my first try, because you get a lot of perks. If you've never been to AWS reInvent and you're in AWS, you should go. If your company will pay for it, you should go. If not, you shouldn't go because it's really expensive. It's like $1,800 for a ticket. It's in Vegas. It's a crazy party, but like they have like special areas for people who are certified, and you'll get, you know, extra free shirts and extra free fancy food. And they're like, there's a lot of them all around, and they're available all day. Kind of quiet places to sit and do work if you need to. So it's pretty dope. Definitely pretty. But cool. That's it for tonight. I'm gonna catch up on all these emails and stuff tonight. And we'll be back on Wednesday for Kubernetes, which should be a fun day. If you're not sure about what Kubernetes is, do a little bit of Googling beforehand, but check out some of the salaries. Go on Glassdoor or something and check out some of the salaries that people are paying for people who know Kubernetes. I think you'll be surprised. It's the new hotness for sure. It's one of the new big buzzwords, but it's definitely something, you know, if you're interested in this stuff, Kubernetes is something cool you should check out. Docker and Kubernetes, I think are pretty important. And I would just check that out in the meantime to get you a little bit excited, to get you a little bit excited for what's to come on Wednesday. And then for you to hopefully see that although it's complicated, the bar of entry is actually relatively low. But to get great at Kubernetes, there's definitely a lot that needs to go on. But cool. Everyone have a great night. I will see you all on Wednesday. I am gonna hop off and get productive. Have a good night.